So, war in Iran. This was Trump over the weekend. I think it was just yesterday. He issues an ultimatum to Iran, okay? He says if Iran doesn't fully open without threat the Strait of Hormuz within 48 hours from this exact point in time, the United States of America will hit and obliterate their various power plants, starting with the biggest one first. Okay, so he frames this as a true ultimatum. Like, you have 48 hours from the second that I sent this tweet or this truth, right? Or else we're going to destroy your power plants, all right? Now, Iran responded. I don't have the tweet here, but they responded with something saying that basically if we do that, then they are going to escalate and start hitting some important targets, right? So they kind of pushed back. Then today you had, this was Trump. Well, this is my favorite part of it, really. This is him dropping a teaser about this. So first of all, I love that he announces this as if it's like, find out what happens in next week's episode of the Iran war. He's dropping teasers like it's a TV show. This is him with a reporter here talking about it. The reporter says, I had a phone call interview with President Trump today about Iran. Asked about the Strait of Hormuz and his ultimatum, POTUS said, you'll find out what's going to happen. Will they cave into the ultimatum? That's what she asked. He says, you're going to find out soon. It's going to be very good. Total decimation of Iran. It's going to work out very good. So just this whole, like, you're going to see what's going to happen. You're going to find out very soon. It's like he's dropping cliffhangers, you know? And it's interesting because he does have that history of dealing with reporters, of marketing, of running shows, where you do drop. Reason I'm pointing this out is because I think it plays into his persuasion capabilities. I think it plays into his deal making, especially on the world stage, when he's able to highlight things so well and kind of create drama out of nothing, create assets out of nothing, which is what I'm going to talk about a little bit tonight. So today what happens? People are freaking out about this. Trump's escalating. He's a crazy man. The typical thing that happens when Trump issues some big ultimatum or some big threat that sounds crazy at first glance, right? Like, no sane person would threaten such a thing. It's too far. It's too much, right? Everyone freaks out. Well, what happens the next day? We hear from Trump. He releases a new truth here. So it's just today. I think less than 24 hours later. He says, I am pleased to report that the United States of America and the country of Iran have had, over the last 2 days, very good and productive conversations regarding a complete and total resolution of our hostilities in the Middle East. Based on the tenor and tone of these in-depth, detailed, and constructive conversations, which will continue throughout the week, I have instructed the Department of War to postpone any and all military strikes against Iranian power plants and energy infrastructure for a 5-day period, subject to the success of ongoing meetings and discussions. And he does his thank you for your attention to this matter. So if you're not counting, this is exactly what he did with tariffs, right? He would create leverage almost out of thin air, all right? The whole tariffs thing, and this is something that he's really good at doing, right? He creates what I call an imaginary asset or imaginary leverage, right? When he needs to be able to exert leverage over an opponent, in this case on the world stage, and he doesn't have that leverage, he will create it. And he'll create it through these big kind of threats. Whether he's going to enforce them or not, whether he can enforce them doesn't matter. It's creating that imaginary asset, that leverage that really counts, right? So you've seen it with the tariffs, right? Out of nothing, he creates this concept of using these big sweeping tariffs against opposing countries, right? And he wields them in such a way where he makes verbal threats about imposing them initially. It's always a big threat, right? But then what does he do? Once the other side caves and starts negotiating with them, then he pulls back. He would switch the timetable of the tariffs just as he's doing here. So the big threat here, the imaginary asset, is we are going to destroy and obliterate your power plants, which would hurt Iran very hard. It would obviously have civilian impacts as well, which is why we don't just come in there and do it right out of the gate, right? It's a crazy threat. And he gives the timeline, they have 48 hours. Now, once Iran starts negotiating with him, he pulls back the threat that he's just created. All right, are you following? So he pulls it back. He expands the timetable. Now it's a 5-day timetable, right? This is, I think this is the same thing. This is just a reporter mentioning, CBS News. Breaking. President Trump says he's postponing his deadline for Iran to reopen the Strait of Hormuz amid negotiations. So where did these negotiations come from? Right? Amid negotiations, right? Iran actually, so he was with reporters earlier. They were asking him who he was negotiating with, right? Let's start there. Here's Trump talking about it. He says basically he doesn't want to reveal his source that he's been negotiating with because he doesn't want them to be killed.
Steve Witkoff speaking with, Mr. President. A top person, don't forget. We've wiped out the leadership phase 1, phase 2, and largely phase 3. But we're dealing with the man who I believe is the most respected and the leader. It's a little tough. We've wiped out everybody.
Is that the Supreme Leader?
No, not the Supreme Leader. We don't. Well, nobody heard of the second Supreme Leader, the son.
Reminds me of Biden, the way he talks about the alleged second Supreme Leader of Iran, right?
We have not heard from the son. Every once in a while you'll see a statement made, but we haven't. We don't know if he's living. But the people that seem to be running it, and they seem that based on really fact, because things they've said have taken place.
Mr. President,
Again,
Mr.
President, I know you've deployed. Because I don't want him to be killed.
It's true, and I don't think he means by us. I think he means by people in Iran who don't want him negotiating with them, right? So he claims to be negotiating with someone. Iran came back and basically called this fake. They said it's fake news. Whatever leaders they do have in place that can communicate with the world said, no, we're not negotiating at all, right? So there's confusion as to who he's negotiating with, if there's even negotiations, right? And then there's people from Iran saying, we're not going to take that deal. We're going to keep pushing. And they're issuing their own list of demands, right? This is what we want. This is the deal that we would want to get, if anything, right? So what is Trump doing here? He's basically making Iran think past the sale, all right? Before this weekend, right, was Iran negotiating at all? No. They were fighting a war to the death. That's it. Whether he's actually negotiating with someone or not, he's now put it out there. He's forced this idea into the world that he's negotiating with Iran and there's a deal to be made, right? So then Iran, the sale that he's making them think past is that there are negotiations and that there's a possible deal. By simply making them come out and say, we're not accepting this deal, there's no deal, we're not taking it, he makes them acknowledge that there is a deal to be had, and he makes them start to think about, hey, what deal would we accept? Do you understand? And then they're going to throw down their own demands, and ideally, for Trump, you're going to try to meet in the middle somewhere. So he's giving them an off-ramp here, all through this, creating the imaginary asset, the imaginary leverage, getting them to respond, right? Extending his deadline, and alleging that they're in negotiations, right? Giving them a deal that they can refuse so that they acknowledge they're in a deal-making process in the first place. So that's Trump. He had a good quote here. He says, he was just talking about deal making. They were asking him if he could make a deal. He says, my life is a deal. That's all I do is deals my whole life.
Well, and you reach
I don't think he's going to be a Newsmax.
if these talks go well and you reach a ceasefire agreement with Iran, do you believe Israel would abide by that agreement?
I think Israel will be very happy with what we have. We just spoke to Israel a little while ago. I think they'll be very happy. This will be peace for Israel, long-term peace, guaranteed peace. If this happens, and I can't guarantee it, but I think it's going to. My life is a deal. That's all I do is deals my whole life. I think this is something that's going to happen. And why wouldn't it happen? So tomorrow.
So it turns out that maybe, just maybe, the best framework for being a president is just to be really good at making deals. Which kind of makes sense. That's sort of what you're doing is just brokering deals with other countries, right? So maybe Trump, just unbeknownst to everyone, was just the best person for this position at this particular moment in time to come and make all these deals, right?